Howdy do, Exiles. Welcome to the first League Star build of 3.23. This is my Arc Golem stacking lightning build. Super excited to show you guys. I made this in 3.21. You'll have to excuse my voice. I've been sick for like the last 4 or 5 days. I'm just not getting over it. So please bear with me on this. I made this in 3.21. I wanted a Legion farmer, and nobody was really using Arc at the time. So I was like, I know it's a good clearing skill, so let's use it. This has turned out to be one of the more reliable builds that I've made. I've leak started it twice. I've also leak started my Crackling Lance variant, which is really just a couple of gem swaps and a gear swap. And then you have like a 30, 40 million DPS bosser. There's a few drawbacks to this build, but for the most part, it really just blasts maps and does any mechanic that you need it to do. This is fully capable of getting all of your watchstones, and honestly, it's just a bang on great all around build. So I'm really excited to show you guys. Arc did get a bit of a buff in 3.23 with a particular bug fix, as well as one extra chain on its quality from its gem. So that's pretty exciting. And we got a bit of a convenience with the Golem changes. The buff effect is now base quality, so it'll be cheaper and just more convenient for us to get our buff effect kind of going right out of the gate. As far as the Anima Stone goes, they've already said that the extra golems are going to come from transfigured gems. So that's still a little bit up in the air, but I don't foresee it being a big deal. We should be much less reliant and gate kept without the Anima Stone. So it's really exciting to see. It's really going to prop this build up. And I know people are looking at Arc this league. I think from what I've seen in YouTube videos, people are excited about Arc again. And this build's proven. It's been proven for the last 4 leagues. And it's one of my favorites. And this is personally what I'll be league starting in 3.23. So before we get into the POB, I do have a personal goal of hitting 1,000 subs. I've been doing POE for a long time, and so it would really bring a lot of joy to me if you guys would consider subscribing to the channel, supporting the channel, and just want to say thank you for where I've gotten so far, and I hope to continue making like banger builds for you guys in the future. So with that said, let's bang on into the POB. Okay, so here we are at the POB. I have the leveling trees broke down in between the first, second, and third lab, and then the in-game tree. Would recommend going Leech of the Primordial first, Mastermind of Discord second, and Heart of Destruction third. And then for your Uber lab, we pick up Illymancer. I do this because Arc honestly kind of likes single target DPS, and Heart of Destruction helps to carry us in that regard. So at least through my testing, this is the best pathing for your ascendancy. So this is what I would recommend you guys do for a nice smooth campaign and a nice smooth mapping. And for our skills, we have all of our golems. You can have this as a 5 link and just put one of the melee golems out. You don't have to have this as a 6 link. We have all these linked to Culling Strike. Then we'd run Purity of Elements, Vitality, Herald of Ice, and Sigil of Power for a little bit of extra oomph and damage. Our Arc is Spell Echo, Crit Damage, Inspiration, Crit Strikes, and Hypothermia. You can get your hands on a Val Arc, more power to you. If not, it's not a huge. Our Galvanic Field is linked with Power Charge on Critical and Arcane Surge, and then Flame Dash outside those links is our movement. And we need Power Charge on Critical for the simple fact that we have this for mapping, but we're gonna need a way to generate power charges on bosses, and that's what we use Galvanic Field for. It works really well. It's super intuitive, and it honestly it provides a pretty solid amount of damage in the. This is what I found to work the best. Orb of Storms was nice for a little bit, but it requires you to be up really close. Galvanic Field, on the other hand, you can be super far away. So it really helps. Our Arcanist brand setup is Wave of Conviction and Assassin's Mark, as well as Clarity to help with our mana sustain. Super important. And our items, super cheap. Obviously, Anima Stone, it's going to go by the wayside, especially with the changes to Golems, which I think will be a beneficial thing for us instead of a detriment. I like to go Azir's Promise first, and then we'll say Bottle Faith for the end game. Super cheap Primordial Chain, extremely cheap, like 1 Chaos. It's literally nothing. And then our Rod of the West, the Imperial Staff. This carries us, absolutely carries us through the end game. But more often than not, I tend to switch to the Annihilating Staff before I do Maven. So you're going to have quite a bit of extra damage by the time you start doing your Watchstones anyways. But I would recommend getting this. You know, it says it's 66. You can start using it. I would get it as soon as you hit 60, if you can afford it, if you can find it. Really, truly would recommend getting this as soon as humanly possible. There is one downside, one fairly large downside to this type of build. I wanted to move away from the meta of using a major aura, like defensive aura, like Determination, and I wanted to try and scale defenses and offense ability off of Golems. Turns out you can do that fairly well. These are not the most tanky builds. They are built with clearing and DPS in mind, so you are going to die, but you're not going to be dying constantly. You are Arc, and you are more than capable of dealing damage from afar and keeping yourself protected. And unfortunately, in the early game, you will be a bit squishy. But once you start scaling the actual Golem buff effect, then you are looking at around 60 to 70,000 effective hit pool and positive chaos res. And honestly, the build feels fine. It's pretty uncommon that I die in the in game, especially when I'm mapping. So it feels fine. But getting to that point can feel a little bit off sometimes. So just keep that in mind if you're choosing to play this build. Golems are where we get a lot of our damage and a lot of our defenses from. So until you start scaling that, it might be a little rough, but it shouldn't be all that bad. Now, moving into the in-game setup. This is our in-game setup. We are running a large cluster and a Thread of Hope. Largely, the tree stays the same. This is a level 98 tree, so a little bit more than the 92 tree that we had on the Leauge Starter setup. We'll go over the skills first. All of these anomalous, this is the buff effect, alt quality. This is now baseline for Golems, right? So you don't have to get any kind of alt quality or anything like that. So that's very exciting. I use these as a 5-link, link them with Culling Strike. Same galvanic field setup as before, Flame Dash. Now our Val Arc is going to change slightly. We went with Awakened added lightning damage, and we use Ice Bite so that we can generate our frenzy charges while we map. So I love that. Arcanist brand, Assassin, and Conductivity. We are running Dual Curse. We have Herald of Ice on the side. Purity of Elements, Vitality, Clarity, as well as Righteous Fire. We are able to sustain Righteous Fire with almost, which is minimum fire res. We're able to do this because we have so much regen from the buff effect of the Golems. We have about 1,400. You can get upwards of 16 to 1,700 depending on how much you focus HP or health regen on your gear. So I leave that up to you guys to decide what you want. And then we have the Glove Enchant. Obviously, that's going by the wayside with the change to Labyrinth. Yeah. And here's our gear. Nothing too crazy, right? We have our Diamond Flask, Granite, Quicksilver, Live, and then obviously our Bottle of Faith. The crit is actually going to be raised Arc got a 5 to 6% buff in crit, so it was 5% base. Now it's 6. So that should push us over 90%. So that's going to be super nice. And then we run a large cluster, very basic. Your small additive, your added small passive skills also grant. They can be stats, they can be whatever you need. The bare minimum is it has to have primordial bond. Just a basic hypnotic eye jewel to match with our Stygian vise. Anima stone obviously going by the wayside, most likely to be replaced with a Watcher's Eye jewel. I will have that in the POB by Friday. Here's our Thread of Hope. Thread of Hope allows us to save quite a few passive points, quite a few. And we're able to hit a lot of high notes with damage and survivability. And then our Anoint moves from Heart of Thunder party to make sure that we can sustain our Righteous Fire. And then lastly, our Megalomaniacs, the bare minimum, you want them to have Primordial Bond. And one extra notable that is beneficial. Pretty rare that you'll find one with 3 notables that are beneficial, so I tend to just go for 2. So examples of these will be in the POB. This POB was as the, one of the characters that I had League started with. This is what his gear ended up being. Our gear is very basic. Stacking res and chaos res where we can. If you can swing it, try to get some additional physical damage reduction on your chest piece, as it does help us cap 10% his damage. More movement speed, res, super important. For our implicits, the ones that I have, I would recommend, keep them there. Cast speed, lightning penetration. 21% armor can be something different, but the effect of your golems, the buff effect, I would keep that. The gloves are non-negotiable. You really need both of these. And the boots, honestly, they can be whatever you want. I prefer the Chaos Golem buff to help us reach our 90%. And as you can see, we have about a 60% effective hit pool, a 60k effective hit pool, which is more than I felt that I needed. Where you end up clearing so fast in mapping that it's really not a big deal. You don't die very often. And then we have our corrupted primordial chain with an additional curse. And then the annihilating light, obviously prioritize 60% reduced elemental resistances. Super important. We're just barely overcapped on our reses. So, yeah. That's what we got. And here is our Guardian and Pinnacle DPS, about 8.6. You add in a Val Arc every once in a while, and it's still looking pretty good, about 19 mil for a Val Arc. So not too shabby. Use that as much as possible. Val Arc is especially good for clearing. So there you go. That's the quick and dirty rundown of the build. There's really not too much to go super in depth about. This is a very, very, very beginner friendly build. It is extremely straightforward, very intuitive. I should have a bunch of notes, right? I have a ton of notes for the Leauge Star for anyone who has questions. But if you have additional questions, please feel free to join the Discord or hit me up on in the YouTube comments, and I will try to hit you guys up with any kind of answers and kind of guide y'all in the right direction. So that's it. I will be Leauge starting this on Friday, and I'm super excited. I really can't wait. I will try to get out another video on another Crackling Lance Leauge Starter video at some point this week before Friday, in case anyone wants to Leauge start Crackling Lance. Honestly, it's just as fantastic as the Arc variant, and it's a bosser. And it's just the build absolutely destroys. It does. It's incredible. I love this build. So with that said, I will leave you guys. Hope you guys have a wonderful beginning of this week. I will see you guys on Leauge Start Friday. Be good. Take care of yourselves.